Imagine a world where beauty is not celebrated, but condemned. A world where the sight of a beautiful woman is not joy, but a curse. What if someone told you that women, by nature, are deceitful, shallow, and only designed to trap men into a life of suffering? It sounds cruel, doesn't it? Yet this was not the voice of an angry man shouting in the streets. It was the philosophical cry of Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most influential thinkers. And his target? Women. Schopenhauer's words about women are shocking. They're sharp like knives and cold like winter. In his famous essay on women, he writes not with love or kindness, but with deep bitterness. Some say he was brave enough to speak a hidden truth. Others say he was simply a bitter, lonely man. But whether we agree or not, one thing is clear. His thoughts make us stop and think deeply. He said, "Women are by nature meant to obey." He believed women are not equal to men, not in body, not in soul, not in intellect. According to him, women are more like children, playful, shallow, and easily distracted. He thought they lacked the strength to be serious thinkers or leaders. Now let's pause here. What makes a philosopher say such things? Was it just personal pain? Or did he see something in society that others refused to admit? The philosophical backdrop. Schopenhauer was not just attacking women randomly. His ideas were shaped by a bigger picture, his overall view of life. He believed that life itself is suffering, that desire is a curse, that love is not pure but just a trick played by nature to keep the species alive. According to him, nature created women not as companions or equals, but as tools for reproduction. A woman's beauty, he said, is a mask, a trap to attract men. And once the man is trapped, nature forces him into marriage, children, and endless responsibility. He said, the fundamental fault in the character of women is that they have no sense of justice. He believed women think only about themselves, their desires, their survival. In his view, women are not evil. They are simply selfish by design. Marriage, a trap, not a blessing. Schopenhauer did not believe in the romantic view of marriage. For him, marriage was a painful joke. He wrote that men lose their freedom the day they marry, that love is not spiritual. It is a trick of nature. And women, he said, are nature's agents. Their goal is not love, but reproduction. He believed women marry not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of being forgotten. So they use their beauty to catch a man. And once the man is caught, the beauty fades, and reality hits hard. This view is dark. It's painful, but it forces us to ask, is there any truth in it? Are our modern views of love and marriage too romantic, too naive? The war between the sexes. Schopenhauer saw a quiet war between men and women. He believed this war is not spoken about, but is always there. Men want freedom, power, and ideas. Women want security, attention, and control. He wrote, women are suited to be the nurses and teachers of early childhood, for they themselves are childish, frivolous, and short-sighted. These words are insulting, but he truly believed them. He did not see women as evil. He saw them as limited, as nature's creation to keep life going, not to lead or to create deep thoughts. This idea is hard to accept today, but Schopenhauer was not trying to please anyone. He was trying to show what he thought was the truth. Motherhood and the natural role. Schopenhauer believed that a woman's main purpose is to be a mother, to give birth, to care for children. He didn't believe women had the strength or talent to go beyond that. According to him, even when women enter fields like writing or politics, they do so not out of greatness, but out of imitation or ambition. He wrote, "You need only look at the shape of a woman's body to understand that she is not meant for great things." This statement is extremely controversial. Today we know that women can be scientists, leaders, and thinkers, but in Schopenhauer's time, women had fewer rights. Few women received education. Perhaps his views were shaped by the world he lived in. Still, many philosophers of his time believed in women's intellect, but Schopenhauer stood against them all. Is there any truth in his anger? Let's take a step back. Was Schopenhauer simply angry because of personal pain? Did he have bad experiences with women? Or was he pointing to something deeper, something about nature, desire, and suffering? He believed that all human desire leads to pain, and the strongest desire is sexual desire. Women, he said, are the objects of that desire. Therefore, women hold the power to control men, but they use this power not for good, but for selfish reasons, at least in his view. He wasn't alone in thinking that desire leads to suffering. Buddhism teaches something similar, but Schopenhauer added a new twist. He blamed women for being the source of that suffering. Beauty as a weapon. He believed women's beauty is not a gift, it's a weapon. A beautiful woman, he said, can control men's hearts, minds, and actions. But this beauty is temporary. It fades. And when it fades, the truth appears. A truth that is often disappointing. He wrote that women use their charm to get what they want, but once they have it, they show their true nature, which he thought was selfish, shallow, and ungrateful. These views are harsh, but they make us question how much power beauty really holds in society. Even today, we see how much attention is given to appearance, on social media, in movies, in relationships. Are we still trapped in the same game? Did Schopenhauer hate women? It's easy to say yes. His words are cruel and cold. But maybe hate is not the full picture. Maybe he feared the power women held over men, especially through desire. He once said that if women were in charge of the world, nothing great would ever be achieved, that art, science, and philosophy would disappear. Again, many would call this view sexist, and rightly so, but Schopenhauer was not interested in being fair. He was trying to describe what he thought was the truth of nature. Still, one must ask, if he had seen educated women, strong women, thoughtful women, would his views have changed? Conclusion to Part 1. Arthur Schopenhauer painted a very dark image of women, one that is hard to accept, hard to believe, and hard to ignore. His words cut deep, not just into women, but into the idea of love, beauty, and desire. Was he right? Or was he just a bitter man speaking from pain? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. In the next part, we will look deeper into why Schopenhauer believed women lack moral sense, how his views connect to his larger philosophy of suffering, and whether his claims hold any value in today's world. Schopenhauer's philosophy on women. Continued Schopenhauer was not just expressing random opinions. His thoughts about women were deeply rooted in his overall philosophy about life, nature, and the human condition. To understand why he viewed women the way he did, we need to explore more of his thinking. 1. The will to live. One of Schopenhauer's main ideas is the will to live. He believed that everything in nature is driven by a blind, irrational force. This will. It's not logical or thoughtful. It just wants to continue existing. This will pushes animals to survive, plants to grow, and humans to reproduce. For Schopenhauer, life is full of suffering because the will is never satisfied. We always want something, and even if we get it, we soon want more. So, when Schopenhauer looked at women, he didn't just see individual people. He saw how nature used them to keep the will alive. In his view, women's beauty, emotional sensitivity, and ability to attract men were all nature's tools to trick men into continuing the cycle of life. In this way, he believed that women were more controlled by nature than men. 2. Nature's strategy. In Schopenhauer's mind, nature had one big goal: reproduction, and women were nature's cleverest trick to achieve that goal. He wrote that nature had made women look beautiful and act emotionally because it helped attract men. In other words, nature made women desirable so that men would chase them, marry them, and have children. Once this goal was achieved, the will to live had succeeded. He thought that women were naturally better at raising children because nature designed them that way. He said women are more practical, emotional, and less idealistic than men. According to him, these traits helped women take care of children and make homes. But in Schopenhauer's eyes, this also meant that women were not made for higher intellectual work or deep philosophical thinking. This is where his views become very controversial. Today, we know that intelligence, creativity, and depth of thought are not limited to men. But in his time, Schopenhauer believed that because women were tied closely to nature's goal of reproduction, they were less capable of abstract reasoning. 3. The young and the old. Schopenhauer also wrote about the difference between young and old women. He said young women had more power because they were more beautiful. He believed beauty fades with age, and because women's power was based on beauty, they lost their influence as they got older. This made him believe that women's value was short-lived. Men, he thought, gained more power as they aged because they gained wisdom, experience, and wealth. So in his view, life was unfair for men when they were young and unfair for women when they were old. He said this was just nature's way, another trick by the will to live. This idea is harsh and cold. It reduces both men and women to tools of nature. For Schopenhauer, emotions, love, and beauty were not meaningful in themselves. They were just ways for nature to keep the cycle of life going. That's why he saw romance and marriage not as joyful things, but as traps set by nature. 4. Love is an illusion. Schopenhauer believed that love is not a noble emotion. Instead, he said love is a trick that nature plays on us. When a man falls in love with a woman, he thinks it's about emotions and connection. But according to Schopenhauer, it's just nature pushing him to reproduce. He said we don't fall in love with a person. We fall in love with the idea of creating children with the right traits. This view completely removes the idea of love as something pure or meaningful. It becomes a biological trap. And because women are central to this trap, Schopenhauer thought they played a powerful but dangerous role. He even said that romantic feelings are just nature's lies to continue the human race. So for him, women were not evil, but they were part of a larger force, nature, that keeps people in pain by making them desire things like love, marriage, and family. 5. Marriage as a contract with nature. Schopenhauer saw marriage not as a romantic bond, but as a biological agreement. He said when a man marries, he is entering into a contract with nature. He gives up his freedom and takes on responsibility. In return, he helps nature continue the species. He believed that marriage was often bad for men. They lose their time, money, and energy. They have to support children and take care of a family. All this suffering is part of nature's plan, and women, in his view, play the central role in convincing men to agree to this plan. He was especially critical of how society pressured men into marriage. He said that men were tricked by the promise of love and beauty, only to find themselves trapped in a life of duty and responsibility. And again, women were the symbol of this trap, not because they chose to be, but because nature used them this way. 6. Female intelligence and talent. Schopenhauer claimed that women's thinking was more focused on the immediate and the practical. He believed they were good at everyday matters, but not at deep thinking or philosophy. He argued that most of the great artists, scientists, and thinkers in history were men. To him, this was proof that men had greater intellectual abilities. However, he ignored the fact that women in his time were not given the same opportunities to study or express their talents. They were often denied education and freedom. So his conclusion was based on a very limited view of reality. Even in his own time, there were many intelligent and creative women, but society did not allow them to shine. This shows one of the big weaknesses in Schopenhauer's thinking. He believed he was being logical, but he was really looking at a world shaped by injustice and calling it nature's truth. 7. Women and morality. Schopenhauer said women were more driven by emotions and less by reason. He thought they were more likely to act out of feelings like fear, love, or jealousy rather than logic or duty. He believed this made women more suited for roles like raising children or caring for the sick. However, he also said this made them less moral in a philosophical sense. Men, he said, could rise above their emotions and think about justice or truth. Women, he believed, stayed closer to their instincts. Again, this is a limited and biased view. Many women have shown deep moral strength, courage, and wisdom in history. But because Schopenhauer saw them mainly through the lens of his will to live theory, he didn't see their full humanity. 8. The female voice in philosophy. Schopenhauer believed that the voice of women did not belong in philosophy. He said they lacked the seriousness, the depth, and the strength to face life's biggest questions. He imagined philosophy as a hard and painful journey, a battle against illusions, and he thought women were too gentle or emotional for that battle. This is one of his most dismissive views. Today we know that women have made powerful contributions to philosophy, even though they were often ignored or erased. Thinkers like Simone de Beauvoir, Hannah Arendt, and many others have shown that philosophy is not limited by gender. But Schopenhauer could not imagine that. His picture of women was shaped by the limited world he lived in, and he used that picture to make big claims about human nature. 9. Women as a reflection of the will. In the end, for Schopenhauer, women were not individuals with their own goals and dreams. They were expressions of the will to live, tools of nature, shaped to attract men and raise children. He didn't blame them for this. But he also didn't celebrate them. To him, both men and women were prisoners of the will. But women were more closely tied to nature's tricks, and that made them more dangerous in his eyes. He saw women not as partners in truth or freedom, but as parts of a system that keeps us suffering. This view is dark and deeply pessimistic. It doesn't leave room for love, partnership, or equality. It turns life into a game played by nature, and people into puppets. Between misogyny and metaphysics, Schopenhauer's final mirror. Now we step into the final and most difficult part of this journey. Here we no longer ask whether Schopenhauer was right or wrong. Instead, we ask, why did he think the way he did? And more importantly, why do his harsh thoughts about women continue to echo in minds even today? The shadow of the will. In Schopenhauer's philosophy, the will is everything. It is the blind, pushing force behind all life. Everything we do, every desire we feel, every action we take, it all comes from this will. But the will does not care about happiness or fairness. It only wants to continue itself, to survive, to reproduce. For Schopenhauer, women are deeply connected to this will, perhaps even more than men. He saw women as more grounded in nature, closer to the instinct of reproduction, more tied to the continuation of life. In his view, women were not interested in truth or higher ideals. Instead, he believed they were concerned with survival, comfort, and producing the next generation. It is a dark and primitive view, but Schopenhauer believed that once you remove illusions, this is what remains. He wasn't celebrating this. In fact, he saw it as tragic. Life to him was suffering, and women, because they are tied more directly to the will, were its agents. But this raises a big question. If women are simply expressing nature, then why blame them? A mirror of bitterness. Many scholars believe that Schopenhauer's writing on women says more about him than about women. He never married. He had strained relationships with women in his life, especially his mother. He was deeply isolated, often bitter, and felt misunderstood. When a man writes such harsh words about women, it is natural to ask whether personal pain is hiding behind the philosophy. But we must be careful. Just because a philosopher had a sad life doesn't mean his ideas have no value. Sometimes the most difficult minds show us truths we don't want to see. So we return to his core idea, that the world is driven by suffering, and that women, by serving the will, trap men deeper into this suffering through love, sex, family, and children. He believed women weaken men, not through evil, but by nature. Men seek greatness. Women pull them back to survival. But is that fair? Is survival not also strength? The female as a means. One of the most shocking parts of Schopenhauer's view is that he did not see women as ends in themselves. He believed they exist to serve something else, the continuation of life. In his own words, the fundamental fault in the character of women is that they have no sense of justice. What he meant was that women, in his view, are more loyal to relationships than to principles. They protect their children, their lovers, their families, not truth. But isn't that also a kind of truth? A different kind? Perhaps the world needs both, the abstract justice of man and the personal loyalty of woman. Still, Schopenhauer couldn't escape his belief that women were tools of the will. And because he saw the will as evil, he saw women in a tragic light. This is not misogyny in the modern sense. He didn't say women should be punished or controlled. He simply believed that, by nature, women represented the part of life that traps us. And for someone like Schopenhauer, who wanted to escape life, who saw existence as a mistake, that made women deeply disturbing. The problem of love. No topic reveals more about Schopenhauer's view of women than love. He saw romantic love as an illusion, an emotional trick played by the will to get people to reproduce. We think we're falling in love, but in reality, nature is using us to make babies. He believed that people fall in love not with the person who makes them happiest, but with the person whose genes would make the strongest children. And since women are the ones who give birth and raise children, Schopenhauer thought they were the ones who guide this illusion. He even said, "Love is an illusion that places us in the service of the species." So, what does that mean for relationships? For Schopenhauer, it means that behind every kiss is a trick. Behind every promise is a trap. Love is not freedom, it is slavery to biology. And since women are the gatekeepers of love, he believed they are the ones who drag men into this slavery. Again, this is not an attack on women as individuals. It's a war against nature itself. But because women are so close to nature, they became the focus of his attack. A cold vision of motherhood. Many thinkers praise motherhood as sacred, but Schopenhauer did not. He believed mothers love their children, not because of moral goodness, but because nature forces them to. To him, maternal love was not a virtue. It was a biological program. The mother cares because nature needs her to. He wrote, "Maternal love is the most complete form of the will to live." This means that in a mother's love, nature shows itself most clearly. It's not a choice. It's not spiritual. It's nature's plan. For many, this feels wrong. We like to think of mothers as selfless, kind, and warm. But for Schopenhauer, even this kindness is part of the prison. It shows how deep the will's control really goes. Even love, even care, even sacrifice, it's all the will continuing itself. So, once again, women are not evil. They are victims too, but they are perfect victims. So perfect, in fact, that they unknowingly serve the very thing that Schopenhauer wants us to escape. Feminism and Schopenhauer, a clash of worlds. Modern feminism sees women as equal, strong, free-thinking individuals who should shape society with men. Schopenhauer would have hated that, not because he wanted to hurt women, but because he believed that life itself is something we must escape. Feminism, to him, would look like a deeper dive into the illusion. He would say, "You want freedom, equality, love, family? These are all illusions made by the will to keep you running on his treadmill." Feminism is about becoming more active in life. Schopenhauer wanted us to reject life altogether. This is the deep conflict. Feminists say, "Let us live fully." Schopenhauer says, "Stop living." Feminists say, "Women are powerful." Schopenhauer says, "Power is just nature's chain." But that doesn't mean feminism and Schopenhauer can't talk to each other. In fact, many feminist philosophers have studied him, not to agree, but to understand the roots of hatred, the structure of old thought, and the history of gender struggle. Because even when someone is wrong, their wrongness can teach us something. The final irony. For all his coldness, Schopenhauer was right about one thing. People are often not what they seem. We wear masks. We speak of love, but seek comfort. We speak of truth, but chase pleasure. We speak of reason, but act on instinct. In showing us this, Schopenhauer was brave. But in blaming women for being closer to nature, he may have missed the full picture. If women are closer to life, maybe they also hold the key to understanding it. Maybe what he saw as weakness was a different kind of wisdom, a wisdom he could not see because he hated life too much. Maybe his bitterness was not about women at all, but about the pain of existence and the longing for escape. And perhaps the true challenge is not to judge Schopenhauer or to copy him, but to understand the pain behind his words and to build something better from it.